Hi, everybody. Today is Wednesday, August 5th of 2020, and it is another Rudy Psychic meetup. And I'm here tonight with none other than Rudy, who has a great lineup tonight. Why don't you tell us about it, Rudy?
Hey everyone, happy Woo Woo Wednesday as we call it, and welcome to all the new Sam Jam members that have joined this month. So tonight's topics we're going to go a little bit deeper into is going to be one is just what your life purpose is. So as a medium, you often get asked those kinds of questions. We'll talk about that. UFOs and anti-gravity, that topic came up in the Ask a Medium last week, so we're going to take a closer look at that. And then we're going to talk about gold and silver, but not the price. We're going to talk about the supernatural value, why it has such a value to people and maybe even creatures or beings from other outside this earth. So some good topics and lots of questions.
All right. Well, I'm all set if you are.
Let's get into it. All right. So the first one we'll talk about being a medium 101, I like to call these. So things that you typically encounter, Sam, as a working medium. I'm sure you get asked a lot of questions that are pretty common. And one thing that we've seen is that mediums seem to have different missions. And the ones that are in the public sphere the most are probably people that are helping people connect with loved ones who have passed over, getting some sense of closure. Others may have some different aspects. Amy Allen, I finally watched the Dead Files and saw that, she connects with those earthbound spirits. And your situation is a little bit different, helping people with cryptos. But one common question, and I've seen this come through in our meetups, is that what is my life purpose? And let's start off with Sam. Does everybody have a life purpose?
A lot of people ask that specific question. But the thing is, there's not really one answer.
Okay.
That's always what I'm feeling about it. I'm like, well, you've done a lot of things in your life. I mean, some people, they raise their family, one of their parents becomes ill, they look after that parent. So there's many purposes, but if you wanted to sort of put it in a nutshell, I would say it would be to advance your spiritual being, because that's why you're here, is to advance as a spiritual being. And you cannot do it on the other side where everything is perfect and you can create things with your mind and there's no time or space. It's so difficult for me, even with my human mind, to understand what it's like on the other side. But I completely understand the story that we are all the same down here. That's why I find a lot of this race stuff is really ridiculous to me, because oh my gosh, I'd laugh and I'd be like, you're going to come back as, somebody of a different race. I mean, statistically, the odds are you're going to come back as a man, as a woman, as a tall person, a short person, somebody. And I was an Indian girl in my last life. And I only made it to be about maybe 19 years old. But I do feel that I have a different purpose as a medium, even though I do connect people with their family members. I help people with business decisions. I help people who are having family and relationship problems. I give them kind of the whole information so that they can make a better decision. And I get confirmations from them by, confirming. I'll say something like the age of the person I'm talking about. I mean, there's no way for me to really know the age of the person, but I see them, and you can usually tell when you look at a teenager, like roughly how old they are.
Yeah.
Right. You kind of get a feeling about it as well. And then you describe them. And so, like I said, I can do that. I enjoy it. It sharpens my skill. But I'd liken it to, because when you sent me the email earlier with the topics, I gave me time to think about it. And I was like, okay, how am I different as a medium? Well, I'm here for the Great Awakening, so I did have sort of one purpose, in the sense, the reason I came here. But, I'm a medium, just like Donald Trump's a businessman.
And that's what I was thinking. You were, as your branch manager in financial services, getting your business background and training, then coming into crypto. So that makes a lot of sense that you can have multiple purposes that on basically a path that you're going down. And is that kind of part of the goals maybe you set for yourself before you come over as well? Is that part of it?
Oh, you mean about making a plan when you're on
Yeah,
the
like
other?
if your life path. So if you kind of make a plan on the other side of what you want to learn or accomplish this life, some of those steps you take or in your life will hopefully lead you down that path.
Hmm. I don't believe in the life plan to the
Okay.
level that people teach it.
Okay.
You know what I mean? You know
Yeah.
how they talk about it, but like I said, I see this over and over again. They just take the page. They have one page of like real information, but you can't write a book from that, go on tour and book seminars for 20,000 a pop. You can't do that, right? So they expand it and they start to make stuff up that are not necessarily true, because some of these things don't ring true with me. I'm like, okay, there is a purpose why we come here. The overall purpose is that we want to better ourselves as spiritual beings. There's some of us who've already been through that process and we're off onto like a sixth dimensional situation. So we weren't coming back to the earth realm anymore. We were already here and did our time, right? But there's always an infinite affinity to a place where you spent like thousands of years like recycling to try to get it right. And then you finally do, and you go off onto other things. And then the call goes out. As Dolores Cannon describes it, that is exactly how it went down. And the first time I heard it was from a video, and she was talking, and I was like, oh my God, that is true. Because as she was talking about it, the people on the other side, it was like she was narrating the story that they were showing me. I was seeing the pictures.
Okay.
And I was seeing the call that went out, and that all of us who came here because of the Great Awakening. I'm not kidding. Like, this is going to be one hell of a show.
Okay.
Holy smokes. I mean, we're in it now. You're seeing it now. A lot of people didn't believe it. I was like, I told you.
Yeah, because it's interesting because you hear some psychics. Someone my wife knows talks about seeing someone's life color, and it made me think about, are they seeing maybe the vibration or something that kind of aligns with maybe what you want to be or what your best skills are? But I guess every medium is going to see things differently and receive information differently.
Well, they should perceive it the same, though. That's the thing, is there is only one answer. And
Okay.
that's what I tell people, because some people are like, oh, is because I did this and this that didn't happen. I was like, no, it was because I was wrong.
Okay.
You've had way too many people like putting the blame on you for, them not getting the translation right.
Right.
Or like, okay, well, let's use the bombing in Lebanon as an example, and how when I was talking about it, because I really do believe that was what I saw. When I saw the pictures of it and everything, it was what I saw.
Okay.
All right. But there was all this stuff about power grids and everything that was going around. So I had said that it would shut down like a lot of power grids, because one of the things that I saw was so much destruction that, of course, even the power lines, nothing's standing.
Okay.
Right. And then that made me assume that was going to be for other areas as well, that it was going to affect the power grid. But that was my mind that got involved, because I'm literally sitting there with the people on the other side, and I'm going, okay, that was definitely what I saw. I can see from me saying it's between Turkey and Syria. Now, the map that Muan showed did not have Lebanon in it. And now I know why it did not, because I would have automatically assumed that it was a war move. And it's not. It was completely an accident.
Okay.
So, and then when he said, is Cyprus, what about Cyprus? And I said, no, it's too far away. So, because Cyprus is right from Beirut, Cyprus is there, but it's across the water.
Yeah.
Because I was pointing out the area, and he was wondering if Cyprus was involved, like if it was going to be damaged in this big explosion. I said, there's going to be a mushroom cloud in the air. I remember seeing that. So where I was off, though, is I went off track on the electrical grid. That thing that was not, it was just power for that area. But again, I have to sit back and look at it as a medium and say, okay, where was I influenced there? What did I get wrong? But these disaster predictions, these are not any way that I would be specific enough that people would be able to get out of the way of it. Yeah. My stories that are more reliable, or ones where it makes a difference as a medium, is the stories that I see going on with the different countries. So by telling people, okay, this you can work through. Nope, you better get out of the way of that.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Especially if you've got little kids, you better make a run for it. Other
Okay.
people can stay around. So this is, the different jobs that mediums um, have not seemed to bleed into or move into the area that I seem to be working in, because I'm trying to find mediums, or like real mediums. There are people who think that they're mediums, but they're not.
Okay.
They're just guessing.
I know we have a few people in the groups that are gifted and mediums. Have you seen any interesting roles for them in the future in terms of maybe not all mediums give psychic readings? Some are just there to kind of talk to the right people at the right time and give bits of information. What are the kinds of things you've seen for maybe some Sam Jammers in the group?
Well, I do see a lot of people actually working as mediums in the group, because this is such a great training ground, because I just blab about it all.
Okay.
Anyways, whatever happens, I bring it up. I think that the information is really helpful to people who are, trying to hone in on how to. I mean, I just think to myself, oh my gosh, if I had been able to do this when I was 20 years old, oh my gosh, I'd be like, I'd be running the world already. I mean, just kidding. I would never want to do that. Oh my goodness. I'm already working hard enough as it is. Running with my crew.
Takes a little bit of practice, right? Definitely. All right. Well, hey, let's go on to the next topic of UFOs and anti-gravity. So for those of you that didn't make the Ask a Medium session last week, Matt Kurtz brought up a good question about levitation, saying, ancient cultures around the world have these megalithic sites that were created by floating stones, and there was reportedly, music or something used to lift these stones. And Sam, you got some surprising information that I guess you were seeing about the anti-gravital mechanism being somehow, there was sound with it, but what were you seeing when that question came up?
Well, I was seeing what was happening, and it was like you could see like the vibration of the sound. So the ground, for example, you could see almost like it looked like wind, like it looked, because it was shaking a bit. So whenever it was even close to anything, there would be, if I was standing within a couple of feet of the stone being moved by this mechanism, this vibration, if you're close enough, then my hair would move and my skin would probably push back on my face and unfortunately not stay there. But
well, it's like those videos, if you ever seen them put sand on a table and do different sounds and those patterns that develop. So something like that. Okay.
Yeah. Well, what it is, it's sound waves, and they heard, and then I had it explained to me that it's like a hum. Like I could actually feel the hum. But to them, it sounded like music, because as they were manipulating this big stone to move, the hum would change in frequency. But that's how they did it.
Okay.
Right? Because then they'd have to get the sound wave stronger on this side, pushing against this to move it. And that would change the sound. That's what was explained to me. And I was like, oh, that was very cool. Like, this is crazy stuff that I would never think about. Oh my gosh. And then what I thought was really crazy was the timing of Elon Musk's tweet about the pyramids, that they were built by aliens. It's obvious, he said on his tweet. So somebody sent that to me. They're like, what's going on? Elon Musk is tweeting about this now, and you just talked about that. And I'm like, well, you guys asked the question.
Well, and was it like who or which race was using this? Was it the Anunnaki that were moving these large stones around, or was it some other race?
There were actually a few here. The Anunnakis are the ones who started the big problem that we all are now.
Okay. All right. So
they are the creators of the problem that we are.
So was there anything else you saw about this mechanism? Because what I'm wondering is this process something that humans either have figured out or will ever figure it out maybe within our lifetimes, how to replicate it?
They have it now.
Oh, cool.
Remember that stuff that I said was going to be released? There's a laser. I think that one will be released first. Okay. There's a craft, the anti-gravitational. There's some pretty amazing things that they have.
Wow.
I mean, I can't be exact on it all because, again, I'm just seeing pictures and, it's like I don't know the names of these things. I just kind of I describe what I see it has to do with.
Okay. And were there any sites specifically you can see being built? Were the pyramids one of those, or was that done with manual labor?
There's a number of different pyramids. So some of them were done by the
Okay.
aliens, but
Yeah,
then
because
other ones were built by manual labor.
okay, yeah, because we always think of Egypt as the pyramids, but you're right. There's pyramids all over the world and large mounds and large stone structures. So yeah, we'd almost have to make a list.
Yeah, well, it's like the crop circles. I mean, some of those are made by alien ships. What they do is they send out, they're not even, they don't have any beings in them.
Okay.
They're like, you know how we have drones?
Yeah.
Well, they just send them out from the ship and then they make this sign sort of in the field so that other ships will be able to read it and get that information. You're thinking, well, if they're so advanced, why don't they just send each other a message? And it's like, okay, well, this is more like they're identifying that they've already covered this area.
Okay.
And yeah, and it may be for some reason they have to, put the information in the ground like that. Cause I was asking, I was like, well, why are they doing that? Like, what is up with that? And then it's like, no, it's not for the people. It's like a signpost.
Okay. Well, it's like painting the buildings in New Orleans. So this has been checked for people, that kind of thing. Yeah, because maybe there is no intergalactic internet.
Yeah.
The last one on this topic, and I think we talked about this back in 2019, but I can't remember. Coral Castle is this place in Florida that this one person, Ed Leedskalinen, I believe is his name, when he was 26, his bride canceled their wedding, and he built this monument out of these large coral stones. And no one ever saw him build it. He did it in secret, but people suspect that he used some of these tricks to move these large objects with sound. Do you see that happening, or did he just use some manual labor and machines?
Just manual labor and machines. They
Okay.
like those stories.
But it's done in secret, so yeah, you can always add those tales to it.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's a good tourist attraction. Okay, cool. All right. Well, one more thing we'll go on to before we get into we only have 26 questions tonight. I wanted to talk about the supernatural value of gold and silver. And this also relates to the Anunnaki about how they came to Earth to mine gold and other minerals. But what would the appeal of gold and silver be to these beings? Do these metals contain some sort of special properties not found elsewhere in the universe? So let me talk about gold, and I'll just read some things we know about it here on Earth and see if you get any insights into why another race or civilization might be interested in gold. Gold is very malleable. 1 ounce can be flattened out to about 300 square feet, very thin. It's very ductile, meaning it can be drawn out into a thin wire or thread. 1 ounce can go to about, I think it's 35 miles. I mean, that's huge, very thin. It's one of 92 naturally occurring elements, meaning it can't be broken down any further by chemical means. It's a good conductor of heat and electricity, but when it can be pounded so thin, it's also something that can reflect heat. The astronauts used it in their visors to reflect the heat and keep some of those sun rays out. So any other reasons you could see that another race of extraterrestrials would be interested in gold?
Well, they do have gold in their own planet. It's just that it's so scarce,
Okay.
and it's something that they need in their day-to-day lives. Like, it helps them survive on their planet. Like, it's a big part of their ships, for example.
Oh,
They
interesting.
need a lot of gold when they're making their ships. These sorts of things. When you were talking about it, I was seeing the pictures and asking for the explanation of that. Like, why were the precious metals so valuable? Like, why did they come here? And a lot of people would say, oh, because they didn't have any on their own planet. It's like, well, yeah, they did. They just didn't have near enough. So this was something that they decided to do, to go out to other planets to see if,
Okay.
because many planets do have different amounts of different types of metals. I mean, some just have iron and stuff that they didn't want, but they knew that because, planets are just stars that have
Yeah.
burned, right? So,
Okay.
so just they knew if they checked enough. And I guess Earth came up and had quite a bit. And they're like, well, how are we going to extract this? There's only like 15 of us here. Right. Oh, well, I know what we'll do. Well, that's against the rules. Well, I won't tell if you won't.
Nobody's here watching us. Let's just make these people
Yeah,
things.
I'm telling you right now, like that's literally what happened.
Oh.
Man, don't tell the Catholics. They're gonna be mad.
Sorry about that Garden of Eden. Uh, so, are there any energetic or vibrational properties to gold that have use? There's a lot of, I think superstitions around wearing gold and the qualities it has. But if I think about like we talked about like quartz being able to hold energy and like record things, energy that's happened in a place. Does gold maybe have the opposite effect where it can like shed and reflect and make sure no energy sticks? Thinking about how they used to use gold leaf to decorate, temples and things like that. I don't know. Any relation to that, do you think?
No,
Okay.
there's no relation at all. I don't see any relation. The one is the quartz, and there might be a few other things. I mean, the jury is still out on crystals. I don't think they do what people say that they do, but I do think that there are some, qualities there that could be discussed.
Okay. And then lastly, silver. I won't read anything, but I'm assuming silver might be a similar thing where they could also use it. It's more abundant than gold, but silver, it can be used for a lot of things, but it's really good at conducting electricity. It has the highest electrical conductivity, thermal conductivity, and reflectivity of any metal. So those properties alone, I would think it would probably just make it very useful. But is there anything special about silver besides the material qualities we see here?
No, not in a spiritual sense.
Okay.
There isn't. Like I
Huh?
said, we're just very separate from the earth realm. And I do find that one of the constant reminders to me about a lot of the information that's spreading around that's not real is that it's the human mind.
Okay.
It's like when people are like, oh, you know what? I don't know who said this. Somebody wrote it down and they said they had to negotiate with their guides. And I almost like spit my tea out and I was laughing my butt off. I was like, what do you mean you negotiate with your guides? Like, this is not like some kind of human game that we're playing here where you negotiate with them and stuff. I mean, when I say to people that I don't normally ask for favors, I don't normally take time and, because I save it for when it's really important, because the human mind in me says, well, you don't want to bug them too much so that when you ask, they'll know it's really important.
Right.
But then, of course, empowering you would say, you should ask all the time and just, stomp your foot until you get it.
Always important.
I was like, sometimes I maybe I'll try that. We'll see how it works. But, again, that's my human mind getting involved in sort of, it's almost like we have to try to put what this is in some type of box, whereas all I do is I just do my best to try to explain it. And, when you start hearing stuff like that are more human based, then, I already know. I mean, I don't know the names of my spirit guides, right? And I mean, everybody knows here for sure knows that I'm a medium, right? And if I don't know my spirit guides, and I think that's one of those across the board things, that there's a certain set of rules that if someone starts talking about stuff, I'm like, yeah, they're definitely not a medium. Right?
Okay.
They might say they are, but no, they're definitely not a medium if they're talking about stuff like that.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for those. Interesting about gold and silver. And I was going to bring a gold nugget. I have one. It's in my other room, but to show people, I know like Barton Tom's another one that knows there's something about gold. When you find it in a dirty creek and you wash all this muck off, it is just the most beautiful thing. And I don't know what it is about gold that draws people to it, but yeah, it's neat. If you've never gold prospected, it's a lot of fun. All right. Hamid writes, hi, Rudy and Sam. Thank you for having this channel. My question is, I have tried to convince my sister about afterlife, but she is skeptical and said that she cannot believe it. I was wondering, is there a way to show her that the afterlife exists?
Yeah. My husband believes that now.
Okay.
I mean, he knows there's no other way for me to get the information that he's experienced firsthand over and over again. And he, like most people, he denies it at first, but after so many times, and I, of course, since I've started working as a medium, there's many more examples now.
Okay.
I mean, before, when I just kept it to myself, and of course, when you're not seeing people over and over again, they're not reporting back to you on the things that are coming to pass that you told them about. And it's been such a great opportunity for me to take a look at analyzing, where I might have been off a little bit on a few facts so that I can get more and more exact.
Okay.
And I think that's kind of what we've been seeing happening with the cryptocurrencies, why I'm hitting it so much closer than I ever did before, because it's just been a bunch of practice.
Okay. Is that one of the things that seems to convince people more, is when you get information from their people on the other side, their relatives that they couldn't possibly know? Is that because I always think it's not worth trying to convince people of things, but eventually they'll figure it out if they need to, right?
Well, and that's my thing too. I mean, there's maybe at least about 50% of the people in the world who believe in what I do and are fascinated by it, interested, want to see the material I have. The other 50% that are not, I mean, why would I try to convince them? Now, sometimes people change their mind when they have somebody close to them. Maybe if they have a child who passes away, or a friend who's really close. It's more to do if it's somebody, or like a sister or a brother, like a peer or younger, then they tend to start questioning this stuff. And then they do want to believe that there is life after death. And that's the most exciting part about all of this, is that, when I tell you about your brother-in-law, who, it was a joke how he used to wear the sweater, because I was like, why is he wearing the sweater in the house? He's got like this big sweater on, this guy, right? They're like, oh, well, that's a joke between him and my, my brother. That was the joke between them. Okay. And then it's very random stuff like that only the person who's communicating it, who's passed over, would know to say. Right. And they also tell me, my husband said to me one time, he said, well, he goes, people could always think like that you Googled them and you did look. And I was just like, yeah, but remember, I tell them what they were thinking in their mind when they were doing that thing.
So Hamid, maybe when your wife's ready, a reading might be in order, but if she's not ready, maybe nothing convinces her. I don't know. Bradley J writes, hello, Sam and Rudy. Sam, can you turn the other side off? For example, let's say you want some private time or are involved in intimate moments you don't want to be bugged. Can you stop the knowings or info coming through? Thanks.
Oh, intimate time, stuff like that. Well, that's a very good question, when I am out, even with my friends, hanging out, this was when I was over at my friend's house, actually, I turned the volume down quite a bit.
Okay.
Right. Because I just want to be me. I don't want to be like the medium. And I mean, it's helpful to know that the majority of people don't know what I do for a living, just because I choose not to share that. There's like one person I heard who's in our area. I hadn't heard of them before, but I guess they're booked up for the next 2 years.
Yeah.
So I was like, wow, I definitely don't want to be telling people.
I've seen that come through, that question, and the other way, where are people always watching me on the other side? Do they see me changing, all that stuff? And I always think it's kind of like, watching the animals on the farm. I don't think the other people on the other side care too much or watch you in all your moments, right?
See, again, getting back to it, that's a human mind thing, right? That's the first thing you would think about as a human. Yeah. But if you were on the other side, then you would understand you'd be like, yeah. Now I understand how silly that was, that I was all worried about someone seeing me change my clothes, or, have sex with my spouse, or, go to the bathroom,
right.
spend too long in the shower, whatever. And it's just like, what? These are all human things that you do. They did them when they were here. Everybody understands. They don't even care. Like, they really don't. They're more interested in, you just having a good life and making good choices for yourself and having low anxiety. And now that we're going through the Great Awakening, there's going to be a lot of great upheavals all over the world. As we go through this tunnel, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, but we have to go through the tunnel. And, I think that our tribe, our people are just, they just want to make sure that we are not so afraid.
Okay. Rosanna Monaco writes, "Hi, Sam and Rudy. Sam, when was your absolute defining moment when you realized that you had psychic medium abilities? Thanks, Rosanna."
Well, I mean, I went through few different, I know I have something different that other people don't have, and then you deny it. And
Okay.
then you realize you have it again, other stuff happens.
Yeah.
And then you try to back away and ignore it. And then the defining moment would have to be when I was in the mall and I had to stop dead in my tracks. And I had a little narration going. Now they're telling me, now they're talking to me like this, where I'm hearing them word for word, what they're saying to me, but they're not saying it in words. It's just a knowing that I have. And they're telling me that girl is going to trip and fall. And it was within enough time for me to break into a run. But I mean, imagine if you're me, you're in the mall and the people on the other side tell you that person is going to trip and fall and they're going to fall flat on their face. And what would you do? Would you break into a run to grab them? Because I mean, I'd have to practically physically assault her, right? Like,
Right.
keep her from falling. So of course I did what any normal person would do, which I used to be. I did nothing. And then she tripped and fell flat on her face. And then that was my defining moment, that if I didn't move my bottom and get my business sold and start doing what I was supposed to be doing, that I was going to be standing there and I was going to be watching everything going into hell in a handbasket. And if I don't get involved, then that's the way things are going to head.
Winner used to be loser writes, "Hey guys, thanks. Quick question. When our government announced 2nd of August, 2:30 p.m. Melbourne time, that they were going to shut down Victoria and Melbourne and declare it a national state of disaster, I immediately felt an overwhelming feeling of grief and pain for hours for those that are unfortunate. My question is, for me, why does one feel pain and suffering of others? Is this a previous life regression, or is it just in tune with the souls that are currently living in this realm? Thanks."
I'm just in tune with the souls living in this realm. Like, we're all connected together. Another thing that came to me, because I was asking, I was like, well, how come I'm so much up in everybody's business? Like, I don't know other mediums who can do this, right? And then so the people on the other side were just explaining to me how, everyone has like their ethos around them, right? Like their stuff, right? And then so you have a whole bunch of them. Well, what my ethos is everybody's.
Oh, okay.
Right. That's how I know about explosions in the Middle East and trying to put this different stuff together. This is how I know about, what's going on with gold and silver. I mean, that's in a different ethos from, where I was at. That was how I knew how many seats that was going to be, the American president was going to win, and it was going to be after a lawsuit. I knew they were going to go to court. I told my husband that stuff.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So that sounds more like empathic abilities. And is empathic, is that one of the more common abilities, you think, in terms of the various gifts?
I
mean, everybody's
say
intuitive, right?
that, yeah, I would say that it's definitely connected with intuition. But if somebody is high functioning psychic, because again, psychic is access to the ethos, the information. You might only get one or two words. So like I said, that's why it can be frustrating to be psychic, because you're just getting a couple of words and you only know a lot of times after the fact.
Okay.
What you knew, right? Because you weren't communicating with a living being on the other side. You're just you're looking at stuff when you're psychic. So that makes sense to me that you would also, in order to look at other people's stuff, you have to have access to their ethos.
Okay.
So that's probably why they would get all of that sort of reverb from, all of, like when I used the example before about I was opening the cupboard I was making lunch for my son, and then I was suddenly overwhelmed with the story of somebody who I felt was close by to where I was living, but they were serving their children the last of the food that they had, and they didn't know how to tell them, like,
Okay.
we got to go to the food bank. We got to go to the soup kitchen now on a go forward. We got to go to nannies to eat, on a go
Okay.
forward. Like, this is what she's thinking. Like, she's like, I didn't even tell the kids, like, I don't have any money for groceries.
And you're just tuning into that. That's just, you're feeling that because, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like, it just comes, it just almost like it just floats through. You're just like doing your stuff. And then it just, all of a sudden you just get overwhelmed sometimes with
Yeah.
people's information. And I think that comes from, accessing the ethos. And I don't think that the people on the other side are talking to me and telling me this stuff. I think I'm just picking it up from the ethos and seeing, some clearer pictures, because where I'm a medium and I see pictures versus, just being psychic and getting words that sometimes confuse me.
Okay. That makes sense. Why is 64 writes? Hi, Sam and Rudy. I've asked this question twice. Both times, I think my question was only partially understood. Since we are aware that the Anunnaki had major hand in our current form, what was the reason for creating the different races on Earth? Was it that different source mammals were used, or were these differences intentional or incidental? We'll start with that.
Incidental.
Okay. So they started with one, and then it kind of spread out, and
We're
people
all
adapt.
from the same. We're the roots are all the same. We're just different branches
Okay.
from
And
a
I think
tree
that's
that
where,
originally started as one.
yeah, like mitochondrial DNA, I think everybody shares the same mitochondrial, but it's the male side. Okay. Makes sense. And then he also says the tale of the Tower of Babel. God gave humans different languages to stop the tower from reaching heaven. Please elaborate.
Well, that's a biblical story. I don't believe that that is something that actually happened. I believe that it's more of a story that's like an analogy, so that
Okay.
people would understand why there was the languages, etc. But again, it was just a story. There's nothing to it. I mean, languages developed rudimentary over
Yeah.
the years, and we have historical proof of these different languages and how they morphed into this and that, and that's the honest truth. That's how it happened.
Okay. Raymond writes, Muslims worship a religious relic in Mecca. No one knows for sure what it is, but many people suspect it is a meteorite. Some people also say they are drawn to it. Is it psychological? What is it? Thanks.
I think it's psychological, because when you have a large group of humans all sort of descending upon this one item or rock, and it's said to be all of these magical things, people begin to, in their mind, they deitize it in
Okay.
their mind. And so that's a very much a human thing that happens. We see this happen with movie stars, rock stars, you know, some people who have gifts and abilities. They have to be careful about that. People start putting them in sort of, they put them in a higher level of importance in their life than they really should. I think that it's great if you like listen to music, and you make sure you always get this band's CD as soon as it drops. And hey, when they're in town, you make sure you get the tickets right away, and you get the lower bowl in the front so that you can actually see what's going on without getting crushed. But if you were to go on tour like with them, right,
Yeah.
just follow them around, that's not healthy, right? So that's kind of my example about humans and how humans can be. So you always have to keep that in mind, and always take sort of a relaxed and chill attitude about things.
Marnie writes, Hi guys. Sam, you mentioned last week that witchcraft exists. Is there anything we can do to protect ourselves if we feel someone is casting black magic on us? I remember you mentioning in a previous video about visualizing a protective bubble around ourselves when we are feeling low. Will that work against black magic? Thank you.
Yes, absolutely it will.
Okay. Montel says, for the last couple months while doing the odd chore around the house, I had this vision pop up in my mind that I was doing a task with a young child and saying over and over again to the child how grandma is the best grandma. Hey, there are no grandchildren yet. However, we just found out the other day that as of June 18th, there's going to be a grandchild, our first one. So is this intuition, psychic, or the folks on the other side sending a message? Oh, I'm the grandpa.
Um, I would say that if this does not happen on a regular basis, this is just the intuition.
Okay.
Right? It depends on whether or not this stuff happens regularly to a person, or has started to happen more consistently. But remember, all humans, we're spirit. We're just our human body is encasing our spirit, and we do have the ability to experience things just because of our senses that we have.
Okay.
Our sense of smell and taste, and we can see, and we can hear, and we can touch. And so sometimes you'll walk into a room and you'll feel like the pressure, or maybe it'll be really, really cold. And that doesn't have anything to do with you. It has to do with the abilities of whatever that entity is in the room, and it's showing itself to you.
Okay.
So that's a totally separate thing. That has nothing to do with being intuition, psychic medium. That's things that are impressing themselves into our realm, and it's against the rules. I mean, they shouldn't be doing that. But anybody would experience those things that are described sometimes, that someone like myself might get all the time. Like, that's just a regular thing for me to get that kind of information. But once in a while, it is possible for just a regular person to pick that up because they are a spiritual being.
And back to that earlier question about what was your defining moment, I think for many people, as you discover your gifts and abilities, it's usually a series of things, and then you start to recognize that pattern. So I like what you said about if it was a one-off, it could be, but if this type of thing happens more, then it's a little bit something more. Okay. Bitcat says, my wife's gran is very old and has dementia. She is barely there, but I can feel her spirit very intensely when I'm in the room. It's very bright, and she seems to be more alert when I'm in the room. It felt like her spirit is coming alive before she passes. Is this correct? Is there anything I can do to connect with her to ease any suffering she may have?
No, this is a process that she just needs to go through herself. She's going to be fine. And yes, your spirit does get more, it does take over more of, it's not like you just all of a sudden, unless you're killed in an accident, right? Then that's an all of a sudden. But a lot of times it's more like a transition over like that. And then it finally reaches the tipping point, all of your bodily functions, including your heartbeat, stops, and then boom.
Okay. And that makes sense when people talk about maybe they start to call the names of their relatives who've already passed, and maybe they're connecting with them more. Okay, that actually makes a lot of sense. Good. Cat Lady AZ writes, one more. Who told Noah to build the ark if our masters were trying to destroy us? Were some benevolent towards us?
Well, this is what the Anunnaki weren't counting on, and that is that Source, where the Anunnaki broke the rules. Source said, "Oh, I know what we're gonna do. Right? We're gonna use these humans. We're gonna go in there and we're gonna experience life." Right?
Okay.
So that's how it all started. So since the beginning of time, what has the world also had? People who are mediums. So I believe that Noah was a medium and able to talk directly to Source.
Interesting. All right. Yeah, I don't think we've touched on that aspect before, so thanks for that. AC,
I never
right?
thought about that. That's the first time I just asked them, and they're like, "No, it was a medium." Because first of all, I was like, "Well, did this ever really happen?"
Yeah.
And they're kind of like, "Well, not exactly like the story goes, but pretty much like as far as building this big boat that he saved his family in." Yeah.
All right. Empowering You says, hi, Sam and Rudy. Been a while. Thank you. If there is no such thing as bad meditations, why am I finding, especially in the last 2 days, I'm unable to meditate or connect to Source via meditation? I have been, however, seeing feathers. Ha ha ha. I know my body is under a lot of pressure at the moment, and I have a lot on my mind. Is it me blocking my own meditations, or sometimes it is? What is it? Thank you.
Oh, it's just you can't settle. And it's just because, she's waiting every single day for something that
Yeah.
she was told that was coming.
Okay.
And then if it doesn't go that way, then she has to change everything that she's been doing. You know what
Okay.
I mean? So this is sometimes when you have it's almost like it's one of those sort of top three things. If you were going through the death of a loved one, you would probably not be able to meditate. If one of your children was very, very sick, you could probably not, have an easy time of meditating. And so I think empowering you should just really look at the fact that, she is stressed out, which is a normal human thing to be in that situation. And it's okay if she's not able to meditate. I completely understand that's normal. And she's like, when can I do it again? And it's just like, you know what? Just keep trying.
Yeah.
Just keep trying every day. And then if you can't get into it the earlier part of the day, try. And you know what? And I say that, even if you only get 5 minutes, you try for 20, but you only get 5 minutes where you're actually meditating. Then that was worth it.
Okay. Thanks for that. I think we have about 8 questions left, so we'll get through them here by the bottom of the hour. Raymond says, is there any truth to a Japanese emperor giving 9 unknown men secret knowledge several hundred years ago? Or is this just a story that was embellished and grew larger over the years? If it is true, what was so special? And Raymond, I think you're talking about there was a story, like these 9 books of knowledge that I think I don't know if that was in the India area, but Sam, did you get anything around this 9 men or having secret knowledge that they've kept and cultivated throughout the years?
No.
Okay. All right, Raymond, we'll have to look at. I'm not totally familiar with that, but I've heard of it slightly. Goose writes, in this 3D world, our appeals to our ego really just attempts by negative entities to distract us from helping others? Or is our ego simply our own distracting or destructive force that we carry and deal with life after life? Or is ego one of those temporary cards we are dealt in this life? In other words, do we take our ego with us to the afterlife? Like you say, how dead relatives like us, recognizing them still now, or maybe helping others does boost the ego of a superhero like you?
I think that the ego is part of our human trait. And when you pass over, you have no ego.
Okay.
Everybody's all together, like with source. So you really can't have an ego because, and it's like I said, it's hard to understand truly, with your human mind, the whole concept of source. We go back there, we're all one in source, but yet we're individual. How can that be? It's like, well, it just is though.
Yeah, ego. It's an interesting concept. One of those things. It maybe helps in the evolutionary or reproductive aspects of life. So a very human thing. Okay. Cat Lady AZ writes, hi, Sam and Rudy. According to the other side, we were created to be slaves. When humans were still enslaved, was this the Garden of Eden because all of our needs were met?
No, the Garden of Eden story isn't really true. That's made up.
Okay.
The Anunnaki made us, and we've been what we are since we were made. And I wouldn't say that all of our needs were met when we were slaves, pulling that gold and other precious metals out of the planet for them. So I don't know if did I answer the question? I kind of wandered off a bit there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the Garden of Eden didn't exist. So that's, again, one of those stories that is in the Bible that, gets a lot of press, but isn't true. Right.
Yeah, it's one of those Tower of Babel,
Okay.
where they put a lot of things in stories in simple terms so that people would have an understanding about the religion that they were trying to teach. And some stuff was just completely made up and other stuff was historical. So they included, these are all different authors. So this is a collection of works. The Old Testament is a collection of works from a number of different authors, and some of them are people who were mediums who wrote
Okay.
it. Other people are eyewitnesses to historical events. It's a mishmash of information. I think it's good information to know. It's helpful.
Okay. And then Monica kind of has something in here under the comments, but Monica, I think that might be more for the meetup tomorrow with Moo Ant. But yes, all these are recorded and you can watch the replays. Wild T says, "Hi, Sam and Rudy. I've been told by a psychic that I have a bright green aura around me. Do you see auras around people, and what do they mean?"
I do not usually see auras around people.
Okay. It's one of those specialized skills some people have, and not everybody has it. Okay. Cat Lady AZ writes, "Is Elon Musk and others setting the stage for a fake UFO invasion by the black hats to keep us in fear?"
No.
He's got other things to work on, like Doge.
Yeah, and I think everybody who's part of the Great Awakening are all white hats, are all the quote unquote the good guys.
Okay. Jim writes, "Hi, Sam and Rudy. My question about a planetary body that is passing the Earth within the next 6 months. Does this planetary mass or asteroid or big rock or whatever it can be named create a problem with the Earth's magnetic field and energies? Will there be a meteor or rocks from the sky from this planet X, rivers overflowing, floods, famine, etc.?"
No.
Okay.
We're good. No meteor problems until about 9 years.
Okay.
And don't worry, I have a solution. It's disconnected from your brain in the sense that you don't think about what you're saying. It just flows like breathing. So in the same way that you breathe in and out, I could speak in tongues.
Do you think that the words that come out or the sounds that come out, there's any relation to the vibration that kind of help to transmit some energy or something? So it's more of a, how do I want to say, you're kind of a vessel that just communicating that. Where do you think it comes from?
That it comes from my spirit.
Okay.
So what happens is the being inside of me has found a way to use, because remember, I use my brain to translate what I'm seeing from the people on the other side. So I'm still using my functions here, like my brain to think, and the commands I'm speaking, there's no reason for my brain to be involved in the information, like what this is all about. Sometimes I'll get a gist or an idea.
Well, that's all we have for tonight, Sam. So thanks for your time, and we will talk again in 2 weeks.
All right. Thanks again for hanging out. Thanks again, Rudy. Good time as always. See you in 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Bye. Thanks, everyone.